Hi, I'm Mira. Welcome to another story. Let's see where this one takes us. The desert sky was a bruised palette of orange and violet, its fading light stretching over the cracked earth of the crossing. Mary and Caddock pulled their coat tighter against the cooling air, their fingers brushing the edges of the journal tucked safely in their satchel. The train was coming, if the mad scrawl of the journal could be trusted, and with it a chance to rewrite everything. The rest of the group was settling into an uneasy camp. Cass, ever the gambler, leaned against a stack of crates they'd brought along, shuffling a deck of cards with practiced ease. Ella, the sharpshooter, sat a few feet away, meticulously cleaning her rifle. She hadn't spoken much since they left the town, her sharp eyes constantly scanning the horizon. Harlan, the towering ex-miner, paced like a restless predator, his movements tense and jittery. Marion sat near the fire, its flickering light illuminating the lines of worry etched into their face. They pulled out the journal, tracing the faded map with a calloused finger. "Still think this thing is legit?" Cass asked, not looking up from their cards. "It got here, didn't it?" Marion replied, their tone sharper than intended. Cass chuckled, flipping a card into the air and catching it deftly. "Fair enough. Just seems to me like we're betting on a ghost story." Harlan stopped pacing, his heavy boots crunching against the dirt. "I didn't come all this way to hear doubts, Cass. If there's gold on that train, I'm taking it. I don't care about curses or ghosts." Ella spoke without looking up. "You should care. If half the stories about this train are true, it doesn't just take your soul. It makes sure you know what you lost." The group fell silent, the weight of her words settling over them. Marion closed the journal, their grip tightening. They didn't believe in curses, at least not entirely, but the train's legend was too persistent to ignore. If there was even a chance of saving the saloon, they had to take it. As midnight approached, the air around the crossing grew heavy, charged with an unnatural stillness. Even the wind had stopped, leaving the group in an oppressive silence. Marion stood at the edge of the camp, their eyes fixed on the faint shimmer in the distance. The sound came first, a low, mournful whistle, barely audible but impossible to miss. Then the glow appeared, a pale light that pulsed with an otherworldly rhythm. "It's here," Marion said, their voice low. The train emerged from the horizon like a phantom, its massive engine gleaming as though it had just rolled off the assembly line. The cars behind it flickered in and out of focus, their edges shimmering as if caught between two realities. The whistle blew again, louder this time, and the train screeched to a halt, its wheels grinding against the rusted tracks. The group stood frozen, staring at the impossibility before them. The doors of the lead car creaked open, revealing a figure silhouetted against the eerie glow. It stepped onto the ground with a smooth, deliberate grace. Its eyes burned like embers, and its smile was sharp enough to cut. "Welcome," the figure said, its voice a low, resonant rumble. "You've found the train of eternity. Few are so bold, fewer still are so foolish." Marion swallowed hard, stepping forward. "We're here for what's on the train." The figure's smile widened. "Of course you are. But tell me, what price are you willing to pay?" Cass spoke up, their tone light but with a nervous edge. "Let me guess, our immortal souls?" The figure chuckled, the sound grating like steel against steel. "Your soul, your sanity, a piece of yourself you didn't know you needed. The train doesn't take what's offered, it takes what it's owed." Harlan stepped forward, his broad shoulders squared. "We're not here to play games. Show us the gold." The figure turned its ember-like gaze on Harlan, the fire in its eyes burning brighter. "And when the gold shows you, will you still want it?" Harlan bristled but said nothing, his fists clenched at his sides. Marion raised a hand to calm him, their gaze never leaving the figure. "What happens if we take nothing?" Marion asked. The figure's expression shifted, a flicker of something almost like disappointment crossing its face. "You leave with your lives, but you'll never escape the weight of the choices you almost made." The train groaned, its metal frame seeming to pulse with an impatient energy. The figure gestured toward the open doors. "Enter if you dare. Claim what you seek, or leave now and wander forever." Marion turned to the group, their heart pounding. "No one takes anything unless we agree. We stick together, or we don't go in at all." Cass tipped their hat, their smirk returning. Lead the way, boss! Harlan grunted but nodded, and Ella simply adjusted her rifle. Together they stepped onto the train, the shadows swallowing them whole. The doors closed behind them with a sound like the tolling of a bell, sealing their fate. The train's interior was an unsettling mix of opulence and decay. Velvet carpets covered the floor, threadbare in places where the fabric seemed to fray into nothingness. Chandeliers swayed gently above, their crystalline light refracting off brass fixtures that gleamed despite the heavy air of abandonment. The walls bore carvings that shifted when viewed from the corner of one's eye, intricate designs morphing into something indecipherable. Marion led the way, gripping the journal tightly as they moved through the first car. Their footsteps were soft, but the train seemed to amplify every sound, a faint creak, the shuffle of boots, the rustle of fabric. Behind them, Cass followed, their movements deliberate and careful, while Ella brought up the rear, her rifle drawn and ready. Harlan, his broad shoulders nearly brushing the walls, scanned every shadow with unease. "Anyone else feel like the walls are watching?" Cass murmured, their voice a low whisper. "They probably are," Ella replied flatly, her eyes flicking to the shifting carvings. "Keep moving." The air grew colder as they progressed, the temperature biting through their coats. Ahead, the doors to the next car stood slightly ajar, and a faint golden glow spilled into the corridor. Marion hesitated, their grip tightening on the journal. The words within offered no clarity about what lay ahead, only cryptic warnings that felt more like riddles than guidance. "Whatever's behind that door," Marion said quietly, "we stick together. No one does anything stupid." "Define stupid," Cass quipped, but their smirk lacked conviction. Marion pushed the door open, and the glow intensified, revealing the treasure promised by the legend. Gold bars were stacked in perfect symmetry, their surfaces gleaming as though freshly minted. Jewels spilled across the floor in a kaleidoscope of colour, their facets catching the golden light. Artifacts, crowns, goblets, weapons, sat displayed on ornate pedestals, each one humming faintly with an energy that set Marion's teeth on edge. "Holy hell!" Harlan breathed, stepping forward. His eyes locked onto a massive golden axe displayed in the centre of the room, its blade etched with runes that seemed to glow faintly. Ella was less impressed. She scanned the room, her rifle steady. "Feels too easy. Where's the catch?" "The catch," a familiar voice said, "is that the train doesn't give, it takes." The group spun around to see the ember-eyed figure standing in the doorway, its sharp smile undiminished. It leaned casually against the frame, its presence filling the room with an oppressive weight. "You've done well to come this far," it continued, its tone almost conversational. "You have the courage to face the treasures of the train of eternity. Fewer still leave unscathed." "What do you mean, unscathed?" Marion asked, their voice steady despite the chill racing down their spine. The figure's smile widened. "Each treasure is bound by a cost. Take a jewel, and a memory fades. Take gold, and a burden grows heavier. Take power, and it will consume you. The train always takes what it's owed." Marion turned to the group, their mind racing. "We don't take anything." Harlan scoffed, his gaze still locked on the golden axe. "Easy for you to say. You're not the one with debt collectors breathing down your neck. That thing could wipe them out in seconds. And wipe you out in the process," Ella snapped. "Didn't you hear it? Everything comes with a cost." Ass moved closer to the gold, their hand hovering over a glittering crown. "And who decides what the cost is?" they mused, their voice light but tinged with curiosity. "Seems to me the real gamble is not playing at all." Marion stepped between Cass and the treasure, their eyes blazing. "This isn't a game. You think you're clever enough to beat this thing? You're not. None of us are." The figure chuckled, the sound grating like rusted metal. "Ah, the voice of reason. But reason will only get you so far, Marion Caddock. The train isn't about logic, it's about desire." Harlan's patience snapped. With a roar, he lunged for the golden axe, his fingers closing around the hilt. The moment he touched it, the room seemed to shudder. Shadows erupted from the walls, coiling around Harlan like living chains. He cried out, his muscles straining as he tried to wrench the axe free, but the shadows held him fast. "Harlan!" Ella shouted, raising her rifle, but the figure waved a hand, and the shadows surged, forcing her back. "Do you see now?" it said, its voice ringing through the room. You can't take without giving, and Harlan, it smiled darkly, has given quite enough. Marion acted on instinct, grabbing Harlan's arm and pulling with all their strength. The shadows resisted, tightening their grip, but Marion didn't let go. Let him go, they shouted. We're not taking anything. We don't want it. The figure tilted its head, its ember eyes narrowing. Interesting, but the train always collects. With a final surge, Marion pulled Harlan free. The shadows recoiled, and the axe fell to the floor with a deafening clang. Harlan collapsed, gasping for air, his eyes wide with terror. Marion turned to the figure, their voice trembling but firm. We're leaving, all of us. And we're not taking anything. The figure's smile faded, replaced by something cold and unreadable. You think walking away will save you? The train has marked you now. Whether you leave with gold or empty hands, it will follow. The room darkened, and the figure stepped back into the shadows. The doors swung open, revealing the corridor they had entered through. Go, the figure said. But remember, the train always comes back. Marion didn't hesitate. They hauled Harlan to his feet and led the group out, their hearts pounding as they crossed the threshold into the desert night. The train's whistle echoed behind them, low and mournful as its glowing form faded into the horizon. They had survived, but the weight of what they had seen and what they had almost taken would follow them forever. The group staggered into the cold desert night, the sand crunching beneath their boots as the train's mournful whistle echoed behind them. Its glowing form slowly faded into the horizon, leaving behind only silence and the faint shimmer of its tracks. Harlan leaned heavily on Marion, his breathing ragged and his body trembling from whatever force had gripped him inside the train. Keep moving, Marion urged, their voice firm but quiet. We're not out of this yet. Ella scanned the horizon with her rifle, her sharp eyes flicking between the surrounding dunes and the faint glow of the town's lights far in the distance. You think it'll follow us? Wouldn't put it past it, Cass replied, flipping a coin nervously between their fingers. For once, their usual bravado was absent, replaced by an edge of unease. Trains don't usually vanish into thin air, do they? Neither do cursed gold and living shadows, Ella muttered. She stopped, turning her gaze to Marion. We need to talk about what just happened in there. Marion stopped walking, easing Harlan onto a nearby rock. The ex-miner groaned, but gave a faint nod, signalling he could manage. Marion turned to the others, their face grim. What's there to talk about? The train's a trap. We knew it wouldn't be simple, but now we know the stakes. Cass snorted, their coin catching the moonlight as it flipped in the air. Do we? Because what I saw wasn't just a curse. It was something alive, something ancient. You think it's done with us just because we walked away? Marion hesitated. Cass had a point, but they couldn't let the group dissolve into panic. We're out of its reach for now. The important thing is that we didn't take anything. Ella's voice cut through the dark. But Harlan touched the axe. You saw what happened. The train marked him, and maybe it marked all of us just for being inside. Marion looked at Harlan, who sat slumped against the rock, his face pale. Harlan, they said gently, crouching beside him. What did it feel like? Harlan swallowed hard, his voice shaky. Like something pulling at me, at everything I am. It wasn't just my body. It was like it wanted pieces of me, my memories, my thoughts, hell, my soul maybe. I don't know. The group fell silent, the weight of his words pressing down on them like the desert chill. Marion straightened, their jaw tightening. Then we do what we can to make sure it doesn't come back for us. Cass gave a short laugh, but it lacked humour. Oh sure, let's just outsmart a ghost train. What's step 1 on that brilliant plan? Step 1, Marion said, their tone sharp, is surviving the night. Step 2 is making sure no one else ever finds that train. By dawn, the group reached the outskirts of the town. The rising sun cast long shadows across the empty streets, and the familiar sights of the Red Raven saloon brought a pang of relief to Marion's chest. But as they stepped inside, the weight of what had happened pressed down on them anew. Harlan collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. Ella propped her rifle against the wall, her expression unreadable, while Cass wandered toward the bar, pouring themselves a drink without asking. Marion stood in the centre of the room, their gaze fixed on the journal they had placed on the bar. Its cracked leather cover seemed heavier now, its pages more sinister in the morning light. Ella spoke first, her voice low. "What do we do about that?" She gestured to the journal. Marion hesitated. The journal was the only reason they'd found the train, and it could lead others to the same fate, or worse. But it also held warnings, clues about the train's true nature. "We keep it safe," Marion said finally. "Out of sight, out of reach." "Safe?" Cass echoed, raising an eyebrow. "From who? The town? Ourselves? The damn train?" "From everyone," Marion replied. "No one else goes looking for that thing." Harlan looked up, his face pale but resolute. "And if it comes back for us?" Marion's gaze swept over the group. People who had come together for a shot at fortune and instead found something far darker. They were battered, haunted, but alive. For now, that was enough. "We deal with it," Marion said firmly. "If the train comes back, we make sure it doesn't take any more than it already has." Days turned into weeks, and the group stayed close, bound by the shared weight of their encounter. The journal remained locked away, its secrets hidden from prying eyes. The scars of their journey lingered, Harlan's quiet unease, Ella's sharpened vigilance, Cass's frayed humour. But so did their resolve. One night, as Marion locked the saloon, they paused at the door, staring out at the endless desert. The train was gone, its tracks buried once more beneath the shifting sands. But in the back of their mind, they could still hear the whistle, low and mournful, carried on the wind. The train would come again. They knew that now. But this time, they would be ready. Thanks for listening. If the story stuck with you, come back next time for another journey.